Welcome back to another episode of HBTV here on the Hoopball YouTube channel. I am Alan Srochi, joined today by special guest, first time on the program, David Williams. He's the host of the Hoopball Grizzlies podcast. David, how are you doing, man?
I'm good. I had to rep the Grizzlies today. I had to bring it.
Yeah, and that you did. You are the resident expert on the channel for all things Grizzly. But more than that, man, you are a fantasy connoisseur. You are definitely. We've been trying to get you. Excited to talk to you on one of these for a minute now, and we got a fun show here today because we're just going to have a general conversation about roto leagues. All the conversation nowadays is about your head-to-head playoffs, who you want to play, whose schedule's better than this guy's schedule. That's not what today's show is about. Might be some overlap, but for the most part, David and I are going to go through just some general strategy to adhere to when you are going through the final weeks of your roto leagues, which is a very, very impactful time to shore up those areas where you know you're going to have some stiff competition, where you can get an edge over other people, and where you can sort of protect yourself from others trying to come up and take spots over you. There's a whole lot of different ways to go about it. So stick around, drop questions about your team, if you will. David and I will get to those towards the end of the show. And of course, as always, drop a like on the video and subscribe to the channel if this is your first time visiting, or if you've visited before and just haven't gotten around to it. Go ahead and do that, please. We really do appreciate that. Anyway, David, as you and I were talking a little bit off air, I'm relatively new to roto leagues. I have been playing head-to-head pretty much most of my years of playing fantasy. Last year was my first season playing roto for the whole year, and we didn't get to this point last year.
Tough luck last year, man.
Yeah, and honestly, that's fine. I mean, the events that transpired, no, but that team wasn't doing all that hot, so I'm not broken up about that so much.
Yeah.
But because of that, while I feel like I'm knowledgeable and able to talk about strategy, I don't have the experience that you or others who have finished these types of leagues before have in sort of getting to this point. So real quick, I mean, you can take this any direction you want. What are just some of your tenets for approaching roto leagues at this juncture of the season?
So in the past, I've generally tried to save up games. I play a lot of games cap formats. If it's unlimited, you've got a little more of a leash. There you can pick up and move guys and kind of do the short stream pretty frequently. But in a games cap league, you have to be strategic because you don't just want to throw anybody out there. You want to get the most out of every game. So I try to generally save up games toward the end of the season. And if you're in a spot where that's not what you've done, you don't have a whole lot of games, then you just have to make adjustments to your roster based off of what you need. And I try to target categories that the guys that are right there with me, either right in front of me or right behind me, I try to target those categories. So let's say, for example, Alan and I are in a league and Alan is ahead of me in the standings. He's in first and I'm in third place. If I'm going through my league, and you can go into your roto settings and see what stats you're behind, I'm going to focus on the things that Alan is ahead of me in. Getting points on other guys makes a difference. So if I pass somebody, that gives me a point, but it doesn't take anything away from Alan. If I catch Alan in one of the categories that he's in front of me, that's a 2-point swing. And in my experience, that's really where you win or lose your roto leagues. I'm kind of a little bit different. Like my team scores points, but that's not something I ever target because points is really, to me, a category when you're trying to stream guys. There's going to be a rare occasion when you find somebody that's going to drop 20, but for the most part, you're not going to pick a guy up that's on the waivers in a competitive league that's going to go out there and drop 20 for you every night. They're just not going to be there. So I focus on the other categories, the defensive statistics, rebounds, assists, stuff like that, where you can go out and you can get a streamer. Like if 3-pointers is something that you're targeting, you can go out and get a guy like Bertans. He's available in, I wrote it down, 51. He's only owned in 51% of leagues right now. And so if you're behind in threes, you can go out and pick him up and stream him. The problem with Bertans is his game hinges on the threes. If he doesn't make threes, he's going to kill you in other areas. But at this point in the season, it shouldn't hurt you so much that it's detrimental to your team. Also, you have to pay attention to the averages of your team. So if it's close, again, I'm using if Al and I are in the same league. If it's close, you look to averages. What is Allen's team doing compared to what my team is doing? And if my team stays on the average that they've been doing all year, am I going to catch him here? And that's really how you win the league. You watch the areas where you can pick up the points on the guys that are in front of you or that are close to you. If you're leading the league and the second place guy is trying to chase you down, you don't want to lose a category to him. So that's been my strategy. And as I told you off air, I struggled horribly early whenever I started doing Roto leagues, and just from listening to different guys and finding hoop ball, and Dan has been great. Dan is a Roto guy, so for the leagues that I'm playing in, he's been fantastic. But just honing in your strategy. Everybody has their own variation, and just because you have success doesn't mean, or just because Dan is super successful or I'm successful with it, you don't have to follow our strategy. You take a little bit from everybody that you listen to and kind of put it all together to make it yours. Because at the end of the day, if it's not yours, you're not going to be confident in it, and you want to be confident, especially when it comes down to winning or losing the league.
All really strong points. I like that you talk about sort of identifying the people that you're directly behind and attacking those, really heightening the interest in attacking categories where you can get an edge over them. That 2-point swing can be very impactful. And it's definitely been an element that I've been trying to do as well. The whole like taking averages method, I had been implementing for a while in my head-to-head leagues. Turns out it has an actual application in Roto leagues, whereas in head-to-head, that was just for making trades and, being bored at times. But when you talk about attacking categories, and you brought up a couple of great examples, Davis Bertans being one, he's a 3-point specialist in helping you shore up that area. What do you feel that it is more helpful to target guys that have a strong area, like a category that they're particularly good in, but aren't necessarily as like specialist-y, like they can contribute in other areas? Would you prefer someone who doesn't necessarily, well above average, or you want to find a guy? I don't know if this question's phrased correct, like weirdly or not, but like, do you find more value in like targeting categories alone, or do you want to look for more overall general value for your teams?
So, that's a great question. And it depends on team makeup, honestly. So you look at a guy, Dorian Finney-Smith is a guy that he's in the last 2 weeks, he's 41 overall in 9-cat. He's only owned in 27% of leagues. He's not a guy that really jumps off the page that is going to just wow you in any stat, but he's, like even kill across the board, 13.7 rebounds, a couple assists, and 1.7 combined defensive stats. So it's kind of a loaded question, to be honest with you, because there's so many factors. No, it's okay. There's so many factors that go into it. So theoretically, if I could get a guy, if 3-pointers is what I was targeting, and Bertans doesn't bring you much of anything other than just threes, if there's another guy out there that can help me in a couple categories that's slightly lower, on the threes, yeah, I like that better. Anytime that you can, in 9-cat, especially or even 8-cat, any type of Roto league, anybody that's going to kind of help you across the board is huge. But this time of the year, I'm more focused on specifics of I need to catch you here, or I need you to not catch me here. And the thing, so here's a great example. Free throw percentage is a category in my league right now. I'm at almost 83% on the year for my team. So I made a trade. I was losing in rebounds. The two guys that have been fighting, first and third, we've been rolling back and forth pretty frequently.
Yeah.
And rebounding is where I was behind both of them. So I'm like, okay, I'm going to go out and find somebody that's a rebounder, and I'm going to make a trade for him. And I don't care if his free throw percentage is garbage because I've got a cushion there.
Right.
So that's always, you have to take that into consideration. If you have a guy, like if you're targeting rebounds or you're targeting threes and you're really close in field goal percentage, that's something that you have to pay attention to. So if Bertans is shooting, I don't have his field goal percentage here in front of me, but if he's shooting 30% from the field and you're right there neck and neck in field goal percentage, you don't want to gain the the 3-pointers made and lose your field goal percentage. So it's a juggling act, man. You really have to sit down and spend the time to figure out, okay, if I pick him up here, is he going to hurt me enough here that I'm going to fall? And it's a gamble whenever it comes down to it. The trade that I made for rebounds, I traded for Drummond. When I found out he was going to the Lakers, I gave up Victor Oladipo for Andre Drummond.
It's a good deal.
And, you know, it's Drummond hasn't played great since he's been in Los Angeles, but he helps me on defensive stats. That's somewhere where I was kind of lacking. But he's rebounded fairly well, and that's what I need. So I don't care that he's going to shoot 60% from the free throw line because I have that cushion.
You know, it's definitely about, like, when we're talking about attacking categories, it requires that those extra layers, like you said. You know, you need to understand what you can afford to lose when you are also making those types of plays. I thought you articulated that pretty well. It's about making sure that you are really just, you know, you have a very strong understanding of your position everywhere. And there is an element when you are attacking these where you know that you're going to be losing out elsewhere. And by the way, for those of you listening and you don't know how to check your team, you know, your cumulative stats, on Yahoo, you just go to your team stat, you go to the league function, team stats tab right underneath it, and then you can just see everything from games played to, I mean, that's an important factor there, is your games played relative to statistical production. That's why, you know, when you hear people talking about, you know, understanding averages, it's a big deal, because if everyone's hitting the same games cap, you know, you might be in a position right now that's far greater than what you think you are. You might be a little worse.
Yeah, exactly.
Depending on how many games that you have played. So it's important to stay on top of that, not only to know where you can afford to lose, but just to understand where you stand relatively, like at the end of the year. Because that was a big thing for, you know, I'm not going to talk about all, you know, no one wants to hear people talking about their own fantasy teams all the time, but in one of my Roto leagues, I have been following well behind the pack in games played pretty much the entire year. I've been in 11th place for the most part, and that's 12-team league for the entirety of the year as a result. I had very low expectations about a month and a half in, and then I finally, about 2 months in, then I did the averages, and it turns out this is actually a team that's like top 3 right now. And I gave me a little more confidence. I was able to make some trades that were to help in that area. And here we are a few weeks out, and I'm now at 4th place in the league. So it's very important to go through these processes, and then just to understand, you know, again, like which players you can expect to do what, that don't take away from categories that are important to you. As far as streaming goes, David, how do you do that in Roto compared to your head-to-head leagues? Because in head-to-head, we kind of understand the gist now. It's about getting those games played. I mean, obviously, if you're in a Roto format and you're well behind the games limit, then you're probably utilizing some of these schedule-based streaming things. But it's different in Roto, right? Like, how do you go about it?
Man, again, it just goes back to what I'm looking for, really, the statistic that I'm looking for, and trying to find the best guy that's out there to pick up. Again, it's a crapshoot. You know, sometimes you're going to take a shot and you're going to miss, but I just usually what I'll do, I'll go out on the free agent list and I'll search a few different guys. You know, you can narrow it down 14-day averages or totals or whichever way you want to do it. I prefer averages because that's, you know, to me, that's really the way. Like you say, you were at the bottom of the league and then you're climbing back up.
Yeah.
So, you know, I prefer the averages, and I'll go out and I'll look at the guys and I'll hit the statistic that I want, and it will sort. Yahoo sorts it out and gets the, you know, whoever's got the best average up top. So then from there, I start comparing the other categories and the ones that I know that are close, and I base it off of that. So it's a lot of research. It's a lot of work. You get a lot of questions. You know, I've been early in the season, I was in the Discord channel trying to answer a ton of questions, and it consumed a ton of my time. But it's really hard to, like, in a vacuum, you know, if you ask me, who do you want, Andre Drummond or Victor Oladipo, you know, I don't know. I can't tell you. I don't know. I don't know what your team makeup is. For some people, Oladipo is the answer. For others, Drummond is the example. He's the one that you want. So really just watch the minutes played, because guys that are getting minutes played, the guys that are getting the opportunities, they're going to be the ones that are producing. If you go to averages and say, for example, Alex Caruso gets 6 steals in one game, and that's what you're targeting, steals 6, and then you hit averages, and he's going to show over the last 2 weeks that he's averaging, 2.3 steals per game, but he had that one game that he had 6, and then there's 4 games in that 2 weeks where he didn't have any. And then now you go and you look and say Malachi Flynn has played in 5 games and he got a steal every game.
Right.
I'm taking Malachi Flynn in that situation, because the popcorn stats, you're going to have a guy that blows up. Kyle Anderson for the Grizzlies is a guy that has popped up. He's had 5 or 6 steals in a few games this year. He's been good overall, but you just have to really break it down. This time of the year is when you really have to do your research on what is this guy going to bring to the table. Did he have one big game and that's why this stat is inflated, or has he been consistent over the last couple of weeks and that's why this statistic is where it is?
By the way, y'all, if you guys have questions about your specific teams, David and I will be trying to get to some of your questions towards the end of the show. So feel free to drop them into the chat there. And in a minute, we're about to get into some targets that he and I have. We have our own separate lists here that we have compiled of guys that we really like that rest of the season for specific categories, or maybe even overall for Roto leagues specifically. But real quickly, what is the other important thing to consider here is what is your, how long is your leash for certain players, that are currently on your team? A great example right now, and I know that we have a question about this guy in the chat, but Larry Nance is a player who, he's had a myriad of injuries, personal reasons. The rotations changed around him because Kevin Love returned while he was out with an injury. He's been a top 50 guy on the season, and he's been terrific, pretty consistent when he's getting the playing time. But I mean, at this juncture of the year, how long of a leash are you giving him? Are you even starting a guy like him? I mean, I guess the area, I guess to make it more general, what is your threshold for top 60, maybe top 70 player? Who are you starting in these close games to finish out the year? And at what point do you just move on from a guy that's been productive but isn't now?
Actually, I had a great example of Terrence Ross is a guy that he's been pretty good all year. And since the Firehouse sale, since Orlando moved everybody, I'm thinking, man, he's going to get a ton of shots. He'll be great.
Same here.
And he's been mid 200s. I had to move on from him.
Yeah.
So, a guy like Nance is really tough. A guy that's top 50 is tough to let go of, but it's winning time. And you have to really consider, is he going to play enough to help me out? In an unlimited format, I think the leash is shorter because you can go out and pick up a number of different guys to fire at the stat. In a games cap format, I think I'm holding on to him for a little bit. Team makeup makes a difference. If you can afford to hold on to him, if you're really trying to make up space and you have the games cap, then he's not a guy that I'm scared to move on from, just because Cleveland has been really just kind of weird this year, honestly, and he's had a tough season as much as he's missed. So I'm not scared to move on from him right now. I'm not rushing to drop him. If there's somebody out there for a specific category that I need, he may be toward the bottom of the list of guys that I would cut, but he's not somebody that I'm just, married to. And it goes back to averages. I know it sounds like we're beating a dead horse with that, but that's what you have to watch that. And injury guys, Jaren Jackson, James Harden, SGA, LaMelo Ball, that's just a few of the names out there. Am I going to get value from them for the rest of the season? And right now, LaMelo may come back for a little bit. You may get a few games out of him at the end of the season. It's really just about watching the teams. I try to follow as many team pages as I can and follow people that are updating the injury reports. So you find a lot of teams, some teams have their PR page open where anybody can follow it. And then some teams have it locked out on Twitter, where
just for media access. Yeah.
So I try to find out the guys for certain teams that are tweeting out the injury reports, and that's what I watch for. And I try to use that information, just gather as much information as you can on the guy, and then base your decision on, am I going to drop this guy because of this reason? So I know, like, the Larry Nance may be an unpopular take of I'm not scared to drop him, but even though he's been top 50 this season, just, it's this time of year, it's what have you done for me lately?
Yeah.
And I don't know if he is going to get back, with Kevin Love coming back. I know Jared Allen has missed some time over there. I think he's playing now. So there's a lot of people that kind of mud up his minutes. If I'm watching at the end of the night, I'm going and looking. If I have Larry Nance right now, at the end of the night of every game, I'm going and watching how many minutes did he play. And if he is below 20, he's gone.
Oh yeah.
Like
easy.
that's really that's where it is. It's the opportunity. I talked about minutes played earlier, and I think it was Ethan. He said this whenever him and Adam were on the other day. He said, "Don't." I don't remember exactly how he said it, but basically, don't mix up name value with game value. And I think that was a great quote, because a lot of times we will hold on to a guy like Nance because we know he's been top 50 all season. But in the end, that may come back and bite you if you hold on to him for too long. And so where that is a pretty delicate balance, and it's tough to make that decision. But I just encourage you guys to get as much information as you can on him or any player that you're considering dropping, and not just knee-jerk reaction, drop a guy because he didn't play. If I have Larry Nance, I'm watching, and if we go 2 to 3 games and he's under 20 minutes, then he's gone. And that's that. His name was just the one that you mentioned, so he's out there. But that's basically, anybody in that range that I would consider dropping. That's what I'm giving them at this point in the season.
In that vein of collecting more information to sort of figure out where your threshold would lie, this is something that I've tried to do towards the lead up to this season, and that's to figure out exactly how many days of games are left specifically, which Yahoo does. They list at the bottom of the page for you, and then just take a look at the games remaining for all of my best players, and just map it out. How many games can I get out of my top 40 players? 4 or 5 of them. How does that cut into the games cap? I base the threshold off of, like, how many of these top guys I can keep going down on the list can I just play exclusively and then meet the minimum requirements for games played. At that point, like, if you're saying I have like 10 top 80 guys on my team, is there even a reason to play anyone below that at that point? Or if you can meet the games cap with just those players?
Yeah, and in Roto, the answer to that's probably, no. You probably don't want to play anybody else.
Yeah.
And it's so hard. I love head-to-head, but I think the challenge of Roto is really what kind of sucked me into it, because head-to-head, I can look at the matchup. I can go and look at the other guy's team and be like, okay, he's got more games this week, so I need to stream more guys. I need to make moves to try and make up the games, and it's a lot tougher in Roto.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm sure those of you who are trying it out for the first time this year because of all the injuries that have been associated with this season, I'm sure you're all finding that out for the first time yourselves. It's a totally different ball game at this point. It's like a slow burn that you said. It's all leading to this point, and it's still really, for a lot of these leagues, it comes down to the final days of the year to really determine where it all pans out. And it is a holistic approach to just fantasy sports in general. So why don't we dive into a couple names that we're interested in? I want to talk about targets, but before that, why don't we just say this? Is there anyone on your list that you like just right now as a rest of season ad, just like guys who are floating around the waiver wire right now that you would consider plugging into your Roto lineups?
Dorian Finney-Smith, he would be number 1 for me. He's 41.
That's a good one.
Over the last 2 weeks. And like I say, his numbers don't wow you, but he's only owned in 27% of leagues, and he's a guy that's going to help you in pretty well every stat. He's not a negative really anywhere. And then I watch for guys that are getting the opportunity, and Malachi Flynn is another guy. Toronto has been very, I don't really have a great word. It's just been a mess
tough right now.
But he's a guy that's getting plenty of opportunity. And I'm watching, he's one that I have on one of my teams
Yeah.
But I'm just watching every day. I'm watching the injury report, and is Malachi Flynn starting? If he's starting, I'm going to run him out there. I think something that's really important is making sure that you don't take your best guys on your team. You don't want to take games away from them. So in a games cap format, you want to make sure that, if I'm picking up a streamer, if I'm picking up a Malachi Flynn or Danny Green or Davis Bertans, I don't want to take time away from my top 20 player. So I don't want to plug those guys in and then now I can't get Terry Rozier. I don't get his last game of the season because I played one of these guys. You don't want to miss games from your top players trying to stream people, because at the end of the day, your top players are going to produce better than probably anybody that you're going to get off of the waiver wire unless you just strike gold. That does happen periodically, but odds are your top guys are going to outperform them.
I totally agree. And it's tougher to find these rest of season players at this point. Dorian Finney-Smith is one of those who I think if you need a boost, that someone you can reliably expect to play, above like a top, let's say 80 level the rest of the way. I think that's feasible for him, especially considering that Dallas has got a ton of games coming up, especially if you're trying to make up some time. He's a good option. Another name on my list that I like sort of going the rest of the year, I think that Cole Anthony has taken full control of the point guard job in Orlando. Even if Michael Carter Williams comes back, I think this is still Anthony's job from what he's shown. There's risk obviously associated with him. He's a rookie. He's on a bad team. He's not a good shooter. The percentages are pretty bad in the field goal department, but he's playing aggressive right now. He looks healthy. He's got a firm grip on the offense, especially with Terrence Ross looking like he's not going to be a fixture for that team the rest of the way. Yeah. Cole Anthony's going to be an engine on this offense. I'm sorry. You put it in my head. I had to go there.
Yeah, no, it does, man. I get it.
I just for reference, since it's only been a few games without Michael Carter Williams, but Cole Anthony, he's helping your team out in points per game right now with about 17, 7 assists per game. He's rebounding pretty well, which he was doing before too. I mean, he's averaging 5 boards. He might be a little high, but if he's playing above 30 minutes every night, he could get there here and there. Field goal percentage is a little rough, but he's also good at getting to the line and hitting those shots when he gets there too. So he's someone who I think has enough all-around value, especially if you're in need of assists, to consider for the rest of the way. I'm interested too. The Detroit Pistons. You and I had some shared appreciation for some of the rookies there.
Yeah.
Especially, and I think Roto is the right format to actually look at these guys and consider them for the rest of the year. Beef Stew, Isaiah Stewart, at the top of that list. What are your opinions on Stewart, Sadiq Bey, and Killian Hayes?
Man, I think all of those guys are going to have value closing out the season. Stewart has been phenomenal. I didn't know a ton about him. I done a lot more diving into the draft last year than I ever have before, just because of where the Grizzlies were picking.
Right.
I had to dig down and look and see where the value was going to be late. So I got to read and watch a ton of film on a lot of these guys. I knew that he was going to be a pretty good rebounder, but I didn't realize that it was going to be at this level. And it seems like Detroit is really switching gears to be more of a youth movement. They're trying to develop these guys, and he's been killing it. He would be another guy that's definitely on the list for the rest of the season. If he's out there, he is he's only 54% owned, so 46% of the leagues, Isaiah Stewart is available. He's going to go to I don't have his free throw percentage for whatever reason. I don't know why, but field goal percentage has been great. Rebounds, his blocks have been good.
He's about a 63% shooter from the line, by the way.
63, yeah.
At least this recent
not
stretch.
Great, but it's not, it shouldn't be super detrimental to you. At this point in the season, your free throw percentage should be in a fairly set situation. It's going to be tough to make it rise or fall by a ton. And then go ahead.
No, you go.
Yeah, Sadiq Bey. He's another. We were talking about threes earlier, and he's been lighting it up. That's man. I wrote it down here, and I'm old school. Tony, if it's good enough for Tony Kornheiser, it's good enough for me. I don't know where I wrote it down at, but he's been shooting the ball good from three.
Yeah,
and he's averaging 3.4 threes per game over the last 2 weeks. So that's. And he's been doing that pretty consistently. A guy like Lou Dort, who's averaging 4.3, I don't think that's sustainable. I think that is popcorn games from him, and I don't. He just doesn't strike me as a guy that's going to keep this type of offense going for the rest of the season. And I think Sadiq Bey is definitely going to.
Yeah, Bey has been. I mean, really, it's been fascinating to watch the three rookies work together, and because they have this pretty impressive chemistry. I mean, I was watching the Cavs game the other night. It was the only game on at the time, and I just wanted to catch some basketball. And I'll tell you what, I ended up watching a lot more of it than I thought I would. I was captivated by Killian Hayes orchestrating the offense on that team. He looks like a totally different player than he did pre-injury, and the Pistons might be reluctant to play them, all three of those guys, every game together, because they might win. Like in that stretch since Hayes returned, like Sadiq Bey, he's been around a top 100 level, about 15 points per game and 3 threes, like you mentioned. He's helpful in steals too, and he's played all 10 of those games in that stretch. As Isaiah Stewart, he's played in all 10 of those games, about 26 minutes a night for Stewart, helpful in boards and blocks. Those two, they're pretty much ads, I'd say, no matter your format. For Killian, I think he gets involved in Roto specifically just because the games are here and there. He's being held out of tonight's game for injury management. But when he's out there, he is able to really help your team out in assists and steals. Assists is a very difficult category to make up for this time of year.
Man, assist was just brutal this year. Honestly,
oh my God, yeah.
It was. If you didn't get, it felt like if you didn't get somebody in the first couple, maybe 3 or 4 rounds for assists, that you were just all right. We're punting assists this year, I guess.
Yeah, basically, and I'm pretty much there, like almost all my teams this season. But I think that if Killian Hayes is on your wire in your Roto league, and take a look at your numbers, see what you need to attack and what you need to defend. If Killian Hayes can help you, don't worry about the games played with him. I think that he is a worthwhile add in those formats right now for his ability to help in those guard stats. The percentages are pretty decent with him. I mean, sometimes he's shooting a little too much, and it's not that so he can hurt you in that area. But for the most part, he's a very solid point guard option at this juncture of the season.
Percentages from a rookie guard, especially, that's not.
It's going to happen.
Yeah, you kind of expect that.
Who are some of these? Who are some stat specific streamers that you'd recommend for this stretch run? I've got one in mind that. Honestly, he might have fallen, given recent developments of what we've learned about some of the stars on this team, he might have fallen into my bucket of guys I might trust for the rest of the year. Bruce Brown in Brooklyn is, I think, a guy that is very worthwhile for if you need help in rebounding or steals.
Rebound's great for a guard, man.
He's basically a center. He's like a PJ Tucker type. I mean, he is, especially since LaMarcus Aldridge has gone out.
Yeah,
this team Bruce Brown is one of the most reliable rebounders on Brooklyn. He's playing pretty consistently. You can take a look at his game log. He's hitting about 7 boards a night. It's been even amplified recently without Durant in the lineup. But as long as Harden is gone, which seems like it's going to be the rest of the year, at least the vast majority of it.
Based off of what Nash said, it looks like we're maybe playoffs.
Yeah,
if we're lucky, right at the end of the season. But that's another tough one.
He's a guard, but he's a guard eligible player who helps in rebounds. He helps in field goal percentage too. He's going to give you numbers that you won't typically get out of a guard pretty consistently. So he's one of my favorite streaming targets for pretty much all leagues, but especially in Roto when you're trying to attack specific categories. Great guy to throw in there if you need help in those big man stats. What's another guy that you've got that you're looking at, David?
So I blocks was actually the first category that I had down on my sheet. Yeah. We talked about Isaiah Stewart, but I have 2 other guys outside of him, and I think that they are going to be widely available in a lot of leagues. If super competitive leagues, you may miss out on them. But Goga from the
Goga
Pacers,
Batadze.
Yeah, he's missing tonight with the ankle, but he was not. There was a chance that he could play tonight, and that's Indiana is hurting right now with Turner and Sabonis is missing time. I tweeted earlier today with Goga missing. I feel like Justin Holiday may get some center minutes tonight. I'm just kidding, obviously, but they're going to be very, very shorthanded in the big man.
I think they have O'Shea Brissett. Yeah, I don't know if that's how you say his first name, but he's like a twiggy forward. He's going to be holding down most of the center minutes tonight for them.
Yeah, and that's I think he's just on a 10-day, so that's kind of he's going to get a lot of time for a guy that's on a 10-day. So Goga and then Daniel Gafford in Washington.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like he is really, to me, I've watched some of the Wizards games because my son is a huge Westbrook fan. So we'll turn on League Pass and we'll catch as many of those as we can. And he's head and shoulders better than anybody else in the center position on that team.
Not even close.
I don't even know how he's not getting
maddening.
more minutes. But so those are two guys. If I'm targeting blocks, both of those guys are widely available in leagues, and that's who I would go after. Probably, I would think Goga is going to get a little more go whenever he does come back.
I like what you did there.
Yeah, that was not intentional. Not
even better
at all. So yeah, I think he gets a little more time just because the Brooks and his rotations out there are just weird in Washington. But I'm not unhappy if I miss out on Goga if I end up with Gafford.
And Goga, just I have him on my list too. And what's especially impactful about him is when you look at the games that Turner recently missed with that ankle sprain, about 7 in there. Goga was averaging about 17 minutes off the bench, and that was enough. He was averaging 2 blocks per game in that span, 5 boards, a 3-pointer. He was top 130 in 9 category leagues in that span, and that's really because his field goal percentage was uncharacteristically low at 36%. So, look, 17 minutes, 18 minutes, that's all you'll need out of him to help you in that category, but also elsewhere. I mean, he could be someone who could be a top 100 player in that amount of time. And with Turner out indefinitely, he's about as reliable as they come for that specific area. Another guy that's worth mentioning, at least in a short-term capacity, with the news that Kawhi Leonard is going to be missing at least the next week, and that's at least the next week. It might be even more time than that. It's Marcus Morris. You need someone who can help you out in points and threes, especially someone who has forward and center eligibility like him. Those are 2 areas that you typically don't get for those positions. He's going to be relied on pretty heavily on offense. I think that he'll be go ahead.
Yeah, they're skeleton crew tonight. So if you've got him on your team, tonight is a good night to run him out there.
Sure. It's like New York Knicks Marcus Morris from the beginning of last season. Like he's going to
get a lot of usage tonight.
Yeah,
for sure.
I think he'll be relatively consistent in at least those 2 scoring categories for you. Nick Batum, he's pretty boring, but that's pretty good for Roto actually, because he's not going to hurt you anywhere, and he's getting enough time right now where he'll just sort of, if you don't need it to attack a category and you just want someone to stream in there who can give you a little bit of everything, Nick Batum's got some run this next 4 or 5 games or so.
And I think he's like top 75 on the season, isn't he?
I picked him up. I picked him up at the beginning of the year thinking like, I'll just ride it out until, he inevitably gets shifted down. And I ended up holding on to him for like 2.5 months. He's been very consistent, little worse since Marcus Morris leaped him into the starting lineup, but he's still playing. And especially with Leonard out, he's going to continue to see enough time to help your team in a pretty understated way.
Yeah, the Clippers have been they've been resting Paul George on back-to-backs as well. So that's if you have Batum or Morris on your team and you're in the games cap format, if George is playing, maybe you can set one of those guys. But if they're missing Kawhi and Paul George, you're safe to run. And I mean, with Batum, because of his consistency, I think you're safe to run him out there pretty well anytime. But Morris, if Kawhi and PG are both gone, I just think his usage will go through the roof, and I think he could really give you a nice little punch.
Yeah, I'm totally in agreement there. Well, I want to take a look at some of the questions that we've had roll in so far before we close up the show here. Tama, who we've honestly kind of touched on your question, somewhat intentionally on my end because I brought up Larry Nance earlier, but he wants to know what we do with Larry Nance and Malachi Flynn. He says he needs steals, but there are streamable options every day for those slots. And we touched on Flynn too. Tonight will be really interesting to see how he gets involved with Kyle Lowry and Fred VanVleet and Pascal and OG all back in the lineup. I don't really know how Toronto is going to proceed going forward here, but how about this, David? If we find out that it's just kind of going to be an every other game type of affair for these Raptors lead guards in particular, where does that put Malachi Flynn for you? Would you rather stream his spot at that point, or would you rather save him for those games? Okay.
Yeah. So I would stream his spot, and that's, I like him for the rest of the season, but because of this, could be every other day, every other game. it's risky. If they decide to just shut Kyle Lowry down,
Yeah.
his value is probably going to go like shoot through the roof when he's getting the time. He's been productive. But like you said, there are plenty of guys out there that are streamable for steals. DeAnthony Melton here at Hoop Ball, we talk about him all the time, and it's easy for me. It's not a homer thing because I cover Memphis. He's a guy that's 14% owned right now, 14%, and I can't wrap my mind around that. I know the injury. Howard rolled up on him, so he missed some time, and Memphis has been very weird with injuries lately. But he's a guy that you can go out and get, and you can stream. And he's going to get minutes. Is it going to be 15 minutes? Is it going to be 25? Is it going to be 40? Even though I cover the Grizzlies, I can't tell you that because Taylor Jenkins has been doing funky stuff with the rotations all year long. But Lou Dort is out there. He's available in a lot of leagues. And Korkmaz, he's a good steals guy as well that's available for stream. I think I kind of touched on Nance and where I was at with him.
Yeah.
I don't have a huge connection to him. So my leash for him is not as long as some other people may be. But yeah, I'm fine with streaming them. I think this time of the year you're playing to win, and it's really hard to give up games. You do not want to go under. You want to make sure you're hitting that games cap. But again, keep in mind, don't want to take time away from your top end guys either. You don't want to miss any games because you're streaming too much.
Yeah, I definitely want to create a budget for yourself, if you will, to figure out where you can actually stream in value. And I'd say that particularly Flynn, I'd agree with David. He's the guy that, assuming that this is a Roto league, again, this is a Roto show, guys. If you got head-to-head questions, we can answer those too. But a lot of our questions are being framed in like the Roto league type format. So if you're in a head-to-head, then perhaps the advice is a little different for you, Tama. But even in a Roto league, I mean, even in a head-to-head league, I think that both of those guys are a little tougher during the playoffs at this juncture of the year, especially Flynn.
Yeah, man, head-to-head, there's to me, if I'm in a head-to-head league, I'm not touching either one of these guys right now. In a Roto games cap format, it's fine. I can afford to set on them a little bit because I have other top-end players that I can play over the top of them. But in a head-to-head format, they're not even on my squad right now. I'm looking for guys that are going to be out there and they're gonna bring stats night in and night out. And I think you have to, you mentioned, you touched on schedules earlier. You have to look. There's a lot of teams that are 5-7 right now, and that's where you get your value. Find one of these teams that are, doing a 5-7, and go out there and get a guy. I think when Miami's 5-7, I don't have it in front of me, but I know they've got a 5-7 coming. Maybe it's
Sunday.
Okay,
might be on Sunday.
Kendrick Nunn. He's 36% owned. If you're looking for a guy, he's somebody 5-7 that you could run out there. There's a lot of options. So if you're in head to head, even though this is a Roto show, the guys that you're worrying about injury stuff, if they're not a top 30 player, I'm fine with moving at this time of the year. And also I say that, but it depends on the injury. If they're a top 50 guy, and I think they're going to be pretty much healthy the rest of the season, I may hold on to them a little bit longer. But I have no faith in Larry Nance this season as much time as he's been off the floor.
Yeah, I'm have some tough decisions to make on that front with one of my teams. I think your name is Ethype, unless I'm going to pronounce that. You're going to have to give us a little more information on which Jay McDaniel that's going to be, because there are two of them. I'm going to assume Jalen because he's the one really producing right now, but if you're still listening and want to correct us, go ahead. But you're dropping Naz Reid for either Jalen McDaniels or Jay Rich. I mean, honestly, whatever McDaniel that is, I think I'd prefer either over Josh Richardson at this point, unless you need the games played in which Richardson has the advantage starting around. Okay, yeah. So Jalen McDaniels was the one that he preferred. I prefer Jalen. Well,
yeah, he's been.
We should consider that. I mean, I'm curious what you might think about this. How is Jalen McDaniels' role going to be impacted by LaMelo Ball coming back? Different positions, sure, but you're going to have a ton of usage go LaMelo's way. Those two haven't really shared the floor with each other all that much. There's definitely more of a LaMelo Miles Bridges connection than there is a LaMelo Jalen Daniels connection. Do you feel that his value could take a hit, even if Gordon Hayward is and Devontae Graham are still out?
Man, I don't know that LaMelo comes back and enough time to be beneficial. I think it's going to be really close to. I think they said probably 10 days. So we're looking. What was that? Monday they released the statement about he started individual workout and a couple of weeks. So by that time, you're into we're at the 21st of April right now. So you're kind of mid part of the first week of May. I think that he's safe to go. If LaMelo comes back sooner rather than later, I do think that makes an impact on him. But since April 7th, he's averaged 32 minutes a game and 2.4 defensive stats, 50% from the field, right just under 2 threes per game, 14 points, 5 rebounds. He's a guy that's definitely worth streaming as long as LaMelo is out. And you're in a spot right now where you can pick him up and run him out there. And then if LaMelo is coming back and you want to set him and just watch, you can do that as well. But he's definitely somebody that needs to be owned right now. Yeah,
and I'd still prefer him over Josh Richardson, who's just been in an absolute slump.
Hands down.
I mean, even when you get the games played, like Richardson, I mean, if he's not getting those steals, which have not been consistent, the shot's been way off, he's tough. So I would still have some faith in Jalen there. Sam, thank you for listening. By the way, there you are. Enjoy you tuning in. Patrick asks, is Kendrick Nunn a must-add player? I think it's dependent on what you need. If it's points, for sure. If it's threes, for sure. Assists, you can make the argument. Yeah, I mean, he's got a lot of run ahead of him. If you're in a Roto league, yeah, I think it's also all dependent on your setup. Would you agree with that, David?
Yeah, 100%. I think we had the question, the guy that asked about Jalen McDaniels, he had something there at the bottom that I don't think we addressed. He was talking about
Ariza and Gafford for the
Okay. Yeah. So who do you like between those two guys?
Gafford. I mean, if you need blocks, it's Gafford. Yeah. I think he's got the games played advantage next week. I think do the Wizards have 5? They might have. I got that in front of me somewhere. But man, in general,
on overload on all these schedules. I can't.
I know So here it is. Gafford's got a 5-7 starting this Sunday. So he's got 4 games next week. If you were to pick him up and maybe utilize him this Sunday, that'd be worthwhile.
Yeah, you can stream him there for sure.
But if you have no need for blocks at all, that really takes him out of the picture in my mind. Whereas Ariza, he's fine. He's not. I don't think he's someone that I would want more than a couple of games for. Let's see here. The Heat have a pretty decent schedule. If you were to pick him up, say tomorrow, the Heat would have a 5-7 start. Then it's not the Sunday. So if you wanted to stream Ariza for his threes and steals, if those are areas of need for you, then go ahead. But I think Gafford's got the higher ceiling, especially in a scarce category like that. Jack asks us, nine cats roto capped. Is Marshall, I'm assuming Najee Marshall, a player to pick up for ready give up weeks when Pelicans are out of the playoff picture? That's an interesting question because it does seem that if they ultimately fall out of the playoff picture, he would be a guy who would still have he'd be getting playing time. There'd be no reason not to. What's interesting about him is that he's still getting playing time even with the starters as is right now because there's no
and been productive as well.
Yeah, he's got a nice count. He's pretty decent with counting stats. The issue with him is that, and I have his numbers right here.
I'll let you know.
Because he was one of the guys on my list just out of curiosity, because I was curious, since Lonzo's been back, he's been averaging still 31 minutes per night, and he's getting you 13 points, 1.7 threes, 6 boards, 5 assists, 1.7 steals, but he's killing your percentages both across the board. And he's not really helping out in the shot blocking category. So he's a pretty boomer bust in that respect. If you don't have any need for your percentages, then I think he's a great guy to target for those counting stats. But you got to make just to harken back to a lot of what David and I have covered throughout the show. You need to sort of have an understanding to what degree you can afford to lose out on both percentages. Like if you're trying to make up ground on a guy ahead of you, would those percentage bumps that you'd be taking, or I guess not bumps, that'd be the opposite of that, but would that help the guy that you're trying to chase down? Would that help other guys kind of accelerate past you? Because these are, I mean, if the keys are handed to Marshall, Like through this stretch, he's shooting 37% on 10 shots per game. Those shots are going up, and that percentage might go down if he's the only guy there. So you really have to think hard if that is something that you can afford to take the hit on. If it's high volume stuff at rough percentages, that might be too tough. David, what do you think?
Yeah, I mean the percentages. I think you covered it great talking about knowing where you're at. Can you afford to take that hit on your percentages?
Mm-hmm.
One thing that to me for him is a good thing. Someone that I follow that covers the Pelicans, they were talking about Bledsoe maybe out of the rotation at this point. That Stan Van Gundy has talked about Bledsoe being out of the rotation.
It's been bad.
So if you take him out of the rotation, who does that open up opportunities for? And Marshall may be the answer, even though it's a different position, because they're trying to go more for the Zion point forward type thing. He's a guy that could be beneficial for you if your percentages are in a good enough spot that you can stand to take that kind of hit. Or, for example, if you have a guy that is high volume, high percentage, a Rudy Gobert type player on your team that kind of can maybe counterset that, counterbalance the hit that you're taking from him. That's something to definitely look at.
Yeah, he's going to be a name to monitor for sure, because he's, the playing time is going to come. I think one way or another, and different set of circumstances for sure if he is sort of ascending to that main guy. Patrick, I believe, was also interested in Najee Marshall, unless there's a Maki Marshall that just was, which totally plausible, who is up through the G League now.
Correct, got it.
Yeah. So Najee is an ad for. I hope that was a decent explanation. If that helps fit in your perhaps your buckets of need there. Beans asks, and it's head-to-head question, but that's fine. 3 games left this week. Do you guys trust any of the fringier Bucks/Hornets guys? And no, I don't. It's really tough. Cody Martin was the one guy I was watching as long as Devontae Graham was out, because he was, like, I guess the point guard. He was getting like a weird collection of assists and boards, but I don't know, man. It's just certainly no Bucks that I would trust unless Giannis is out. Then at that point, maybe you look at PJ Tucker or Bobby Portis, but it is real slim pickings for those two teams who unfortunately have pretty decent. I will say that the other team that has 3 games left this week that you left out are the Celtics, who, I mean, I think, let's see. I mean, I don't know. Do you think that there are any Celtics that you would target for 3 games this week?
I'm not scared of Pritchard. I think a lot of it depends on who's playing for the Celtics. If anybody is out, if Jaylen Brown has missed a little bit of time, Marcus Smart, I think all of their big 3 have kind of missed a little bit of time off and on lately. So if one of those guys are out, I'm not scared to run Pritchard out there. If those guys are all healthy, he kind of fades away. Outside of him, no. And that's, he kind of falls into the same boat as Martin, honestly. It's if he's going to be out there, he's going to get the usage. Maybe you can get a little bit of value, but I'm not taking a chance on him.
I will say there is one guy I would think about, and I'm going to do some pro host maneuver here and tie it into this next question. I think Tristan Thompson might be someone worth considering if you need the boards, because Robert Williams is going to be out, it seems like, still for a good bit. He's kind of over rostered this year in general, but I'm sure there are some of your leagues out there where he is not really available. He is worth playing in Roto games cap if you could use the boost to your field goal percentage and boards, obviously. But he's not my favorite guy to target there because the rest of his game is so limited. But at the moment, he is helpful in those particular areas. David, this one's for you. I'm just going to let it take. Adam King asks, can we get some specifics about your team? This really game plan for for next week. Anything you'd like to tell Adam ahead of your matchup?
Yeah, no, I got nothing for him. We'll see. Good. I still got to get there, man. I got to get there. I don't know who I'm playing in the matchup. Alan, is that? Am I playing you in that matchup?
I don't think I might not be in that. You and I and Adam are in a Roto league together, but I'm not. Okay. I'm not in that head-to-head league. Whatever the case, it seems that Adam has a pretty good feeling that you're going to be there. So,
I'm hoping, man. I'm hoping. I'm making a ton of moves. I've had some injury issues in that league, and that's we're not here to talk about my team, but I'm giving you nothing, Adam. You get nothing.
Let's wrap it up on this last question here from Patrick. You're in a head-to-head league looking for defense. Would you trust? None of these guys are rest of season ads. I will say, if you're looking for someone to help you for the end of this week, Tybal is a great stream in general for both steals and blocks, especially with Tobias Harris out. He's getting extra run. Only problem is that when you take out today's game going forward, he only has 2 more games left. That being said, he might still be the best option of those guys. I mean, you have 2 games left for the Spurs.
For me, for sure.
And
I'm not touching either one of the other guys right now.
Yeah, and Hartenstein, he's great whenever he's getting the run, but especially now that Nance is back, I have no idea where he's going to get his playing time. So if you need to stream, go with Thibault. Make sure you know which days he's playing on though, because make sure there's no overlap, any overflowing at that point with you. And to end it on a sour note from Adam, he is just disappointed. But it's fun. You know what? I think that we've done plenty. We've given away enough of the trade secrets here. Y'all, thank you for tuning in. Please drop a like on the video and subscribe to the channel. Really helps our growth and helps us deliver more content for y'all like this. We're gonna keep coming out with stuff throughout the playoffs. Come on and bring your questions. We love answering them live on air. David, fantastic podcast. Hoopball Grizz host. He and his new co-host Isaac have been doing a great job there. His nightly stuff, this is a true team beat podcast. If you want to get the nitty gritties and of what happens game to game, these guys have got you covered. Where can the good people find you, David?
You can. I'll start with the show first. It's on Twitter at HoopballGrizz. I am on Twitter at DWill2111, DWILL2111. And then Isaac, my co-host, is Isaac_Rivals. Go out and follow us, man. I'm happy to answer questions on Twitter as well. I'm not always on there, not always available, but if there's something you want to know, I'm more than happy. I love the interaction. So go and follow me. You got questions, I'm happy to answer. And
look, we're gonna have a ton of questions coming up soon because Jaren Jackson Jr. might be playing tonight.
Man, here's the thing with that, but the doubtful. The Grizzlies, there's no probable for them. They've not used. There's not been a single person that has been probable all year long. So I truly believe that he is playing tonight, based off of all the tweets from Ja Morant today.
Yeah,
and then Jaren kind of done a little Star Wars thing where it was a Han Solo track, and then it's kind of over the course of a couple days here, he had the last one when he's breaking out of the shell, and he had his face kind of cheaply photoshopped over the top of it. So I think that he is back tonight. He's not a guy that I'm rushing out to pick up. I did hold on to him entirely too long, went full homer mode.
Yeah, you're not alone. You're not alone there.
He is. I don't know if you'll get a lot of value out of him for the rest of the season head to head. But I think maybe Roto toward the end of the season, we may get a few games where he's got his legs under him and he can bring us some value.
David, we might just have to have you on sometime next week to go over the wreckage here when DeAnthony Melton goes from 41 minutes to 5 again. You have to talk us all through it.
We're burning the forum down if they do that. Burning it down.
Y'all check him out. It's really great stuff. He knows his Grizz and he definitely knows his fantasy too. Check me out on Twitter at Alan Srochi, and we'll check in with y'all next week. Enjoy the games tonight and good luck.